So in this session, we're going to be talking about how you can use informational interviews as a part of an overall career management strategy. And informational interviews can help you gain the networks, the knowledge, and the intellectual perspectives to help you make the right choices in your career and figure out where you're really going to thrive. So to me, this is a linchpin, especially if you're looking at making a major career change, of how to do it successfully. So there's lots of ways in which doing informational interviewing will help you. Number one, it helps you build your circle of influence, and it allows you to actually connect to informal social networks. Oftentimes, people do have these networks across companies based on the industries they've been in or the fields they've been in. So people in marketing know other people in marketing, people in healthcare know other people in healthcare. And so this allows you a way to plug in. All you need to do is get your foot in through a few informational interviews, and you can actually start to build out a really nice, rich network of folks. In the best possible world, you're doing this strategically and for the long term. And this is one of those things that helps you stay employed for the long term. So if you know all the people in the industry, then as new positions come open, as things are starting to change, you've got a lot more people to draw on to help you. As a student or as someone making a major career change, it also helps you get an insider's view on the company that you're interested in. So you can kind of stand out from the crowd, but you also have a sense of what it does take to be successful in this particular company. It helps you talk much more intelligently about both the company and the job as well as the industry. So when you're asking questions about what are the trends or how did you get here or what does your day-to-day look like, it allows you to actually start to take that knowledge and transform it so that you can determine, is this a good fit? And if you are in an actual job interview, you can completely turn that around and talk about, the skills and aspects of yourself that fit this kind of a role the most closely. It also helps you increase your social and verbal acuity. That is, you get comfortable talking about yourself. You get comfortable talking to strangers. It starts to demystify some of this. And so for some of you that are a little bit more nervous, a little bit more unsure of yourselves, not sure what you want to say, I say do more informational interviews. And, let's start with a bunch of third-tier ones with companies that maybe you don't know about, maybe you don't care about, but it'll help you get a lot more comfortable. It's also nice because if you do this well and you start to get to know people, it can actually help shorten that hiring process. So you have a lot more people on the ground who have their ear open for you. They all are aware not only of the published jobs that are out there, but the unpublished jobs. All companies have needs. Not all companies have decided that those needs merit actually going through the whole rigmarole of posting a job and trying to fill a position. On the flip side, if someone knows that there's someone looking, they happen to have the right skill sets, it's a lot easier to fit in and sometimes get or create the kind of position where you're going to really thrive in. So, it is sometimes surprising the ways that this can help you. And overall, I like it because it helps you figure out what the right fit and cultural fit is for you. A lot of times you can't necessarily articulate that and you don't necessarily know it. And if you're going for a job interview and you don't have any exposure to the company, you're kind of taking a little bit of a gamble. And talk to anyone who's been through it. Some of those gambles pay off well, and some of those people feel kind of burned. And, this is an issue not just for if you are a major career changer, but just for a new company. As you start to get embedded in a particular industry, you start to know kind of what the personality of different companies is. That one's really competitive. That one has a lot of really nice people. That one, has a lot of international folks that seem really connected to the world. Whatever, companies start to get a reputation, especially as a career changer. You don't know what those reputations are, and you don't have enough friends that can help you inform about that because, your friends haven't come from this industry or from this field. So informational interviewing really helps you build out that village of folks who will help you and help you be successful. So usually you're going to set these up either via email or phone calls. Now, the problem with email is that generally they don't know what's coming. They don't know who you are. There's no reason on earth why they're going to prioritize your email. Now, that's not to say don't use email. I think a lot of folks tend to feel a little more comfortable, and sometimes it's just fine. But a phone call can sometimes also help you. And let's say that there's an organization, a smaller organization, you don't know quite who to talk to. If you call whatever the main number is, you can always explain who you are and what it is you're looking to do, and they might actually be able to help you connect to the right person. So, if I'm interested in a sales manager job, they can put me in contact with whoever the director of sales is or another sales manager. So that's pretty easy. My best suggestion for you actually is at the end of an informational interview, you always ask people, hey, is there anyone else I should talk to? Or can you refer me to anyone else? Ask your friends, ask your family, ask people for referrals because then you actually have a warm line of connection. And it's reasonable to say, hey, would you mind shooting them an email for me just to let them know that I'm going to contact them? Now all of a sudden you've gone from an anonymous stranger to someone that is got a halo effect, right? You're talking to someone who they already know and hopefully who they already like. So it's not too bad in my experience. Once you can actually get a hold of a person, your chances for success are extremely high. I would say easily in the 95% range for being able to get an informational interview. You're not asking for much time, you're just asking for their insights, their expertise, their knowledge, and most people are really happy to share that, especially with students. So as long as you are doing the outreach, you should be able to secure them. Now, sometimes people have a busy schedule or it's around end of the year fiscally, or they have a big project, or they're traveling, and so you have to work around that. So I recommend don't ever just have one person that you want to talk to at a time. Have a few people on your list so that when you are getting into scheduling, you can make sure that you keep your schedule nice and full. So one question I get is, who should I target? And sometimes people just take a shotgun approach. That's an approach. I don't recommend it because your time is precious. But there's a couple different strategies here. One, sometimes you might say, well, I want to be in healthcare marketing, but all I know is healthcare finance people. So I'll just meet with them, or healthcare technology people. I'll just meet with them. Well, okay, it's the same industry, but they have a really different perspective on what's going on and what's necessary. And depending on the size of the company, they may not even know anyone in the division that you want to be in. So it's not a terrible play, it's not your best play. The other place where I see people often run to is to look for the exact job that they want. So let's say that I want to be a healthcare marketing coordinator, right? That based on my background and experience, that's kind of the right job for me. And so they'll go meet with a bunch of coordinators. Well, okay, that helps you get a sense of the day-to-day kind of job and what different people in that role are doing. But it doesn't help you the most because none of those people are going to be hiring for themselves usually. Your totally sweet spot is to try and find someone 2 to 3 levels higher in the same industry and the same field as what you want to do. So let's say, healthcare marketing coordinator is what I want to do. I might see if I can get an appointment with the marketing director or the marketing VP, depending on the size of the company. Now, don't make the mistake and try and go for the CEO or someone only in the senior most levels. That often is someone who's too distant from what's going on in the day to day or too distant to really be able to weigh in and give you the leg up that you might need. But someone 2 to 3 levels higher, they're probably in some way, shape, or form responsible for the hiring in that division and for those roles, or they supervise the people that are. They've come up through the path, so they know something about it and they know what you need to do to be successful in, for instance, that marketing coordinator position in order to move up. So, they're good because they're usually a decision maker and they've got the perspective, but they're still close enough to the role to actually be impactful for you. Like I say, don't go for the senior most people at a company. Oftentimes those folks have to be careful about who they recommend and who they refer so that there doesn't appear to be favoritism. And so it can actually backfire on you if you go, oh, well, if I can get them, they're going to get me a job. Oftentimes they're actually a little bit hamstrung, unless it's a really small company. So if you ever have any questions, though, please feel free to reach out to me. I can give you my 2 cents on your specific situation, given the company size, and the industry. So you will have homework for any of the informational interviews that you go to. And this homework should be done before you show up so you don't embarrass yourself. Now, the first thing that you want to try and figure out is what can you learn just from what's publicly available about their job, about what kind of training people do, about a normal job progression or length of time. information on industry trends and information on the company. What's going on with it? How is it compared to its competitors? Is it doing something interesting? So you're going to do this homework in part so that when you walk in, you have some information that you're drawing from. Now, you may well be asking the person that you're talking to questions like, how did you get into this? Or what skills, have you found to be really, really important in this role? And this is also part of the strategy behind never starting with your favorite company, right? So you can build up some of this knowledge. But there's nothing worse than having someone come and do an informational interview and being like, I don't know, what do you guys do? Or having no idea, no grounding in what the position is, what the progression is. So, you can find some of this stuff out pretty easily. So there's Bureau of Labor Statistics. I've got a bunch of connections on Canvas for you that you can look at and actually explore some of this stuff. LinkedIn is a great resource, right? Just look and see, type in the title and see a few things about what people out there are doing or what people in that company have done, right? Does everyone in marketing have a marketing degree? Does everyone in finance have finance degrees? Are people coming from a wide range of things? And that's one of the beauties of LinkedIn is you can do some of this sort of stealth research on folks. Same thing with company. You should always know what the company does before you walk in. I've seen people just totally biff that. And it doesn't take you too long to just type in whatever your industry is that you're looking at in trends. So healthcare trends, uh, finance trends, corporate finance trends, VC trends, what have you. That's going to be worth its weight in gold. And if you haven't done that homework, then you're probably missing the opportunity in the session. Now, in the session, you don't want to show off any of your knowledge, right? Some of it you keep a little bit closely held. This is not a time to be showboating, but use the knowledge that you have to connect it to whatever your person is saying. So, you're in the informational interview and they cite some trend that you've already read about. You say, oh, you know what? I was just reading about that. I thought it was really interesting that blah, blah, blah. And so now you're having an engaging, thoughtful conversation and you look like you were informed. Always make sure too in the session to ask for referrals. You never want to ask for a job, but you can say, who else should I talk to? Who else do you think might be able to give me some insights? Are there people at this company or other companies that you think would be helpful for me to really build out my knowledge? Remember, the point of an informational interview is not to get a job at that company. That's too narrow-minded. You're actually trying to build a network for the long term. So here's a little suggestion about what order you want to do your informational interviews in. You generally want to start with something that's kind of third tier for you. The first few informational interviews that you're going to do are usually the most rough, and that's the place where you have the least amount of information. After about 3 or so, you start to get information about industry lingo, general schemas, the ways that jobs work, that sort of thing, so you can have a much more sophisticated conversation. So that's why you want to save the good stuff, the companies that you're really excited about or the people that you're really excited about meeting, save them till a little bit later. Okay, so you have the person, you are getting this all hooked up. What else do you need to tell them? So you need to tell them how much time you want. My strong recommendation is only ask for 15 to 20 minutes. Most people can spare that and it doesn't feel like an imposition. Anything more and you're likely to get a no. Now, the flip side is I'd say give yourself 90 minutes or put a couple hours in the parking meter because you never know how long these are going to go. If it's going well and you're engaged and they're engaged, it could easily run an hour. If it's not going well or if the person really is very busy, you need to be able to respect the time that you asked for. And so, since there's some ambiguity there, plan on the more luxurious side for yourself and the more to the point side for them. You want to be able to tell them what you're interested in. What is your goal? Why are you talking to them? You want to be able to have your 30-second pitch where you can explain who are you? Where have you come from? Where are you going? The more you can dial that in, the more effective they're going to be able to be in helping you. And the more they're going to be able to understand how they fit into the bigger scheme for you and be able to connect you up, maybe with other people or positions or companies that might be of interest to you. When you're in the informational interview, one of the most important things you can do is do some storytelling. They're going to ask you either directly or it's implied, tell me about yourself. One of the greatest ways to start this is tell them what you love doing, right? Do you love problem solving? Do you love modeling? Do you love working with people? What kind of problems do you want to solve? What kind of challenges really get you excited and that you want to work on? That's a way to tap into some inner passion that will really shine through to you. Sometimes, people will do these recitations of this is my degree or this is what I did in my last job. Those are recitations. That's not what lights you up. And what you really want to get at is the stuff that is unique about you, that's exciting to you, and how to share that in a way that actually engages your audience. Now, humans are social creatures. We respond to passion likewise. One thing you do need to be able to do, so after you tell them about yourself through these mechanisms of what you enjoy doing, how you want to contribute, is you want to be able to talk about your goals, right? What is it that you want to be doing? It's okay to say, I haven't totally figured it out. Ideally, though, with each successive iteration, you're getting closer to, one or two things that really light you up. And it's okay to ask them for some feedback. One of the things that I think these folks can be really helpful on is hearing what it is you like doing and seeing sort of how you behave and giving you advice. So, for instance, I've talked with folks who their words told me that they want to be in sales. There was nothing about their demeanor at all that said that that was the right field for them. Not a thing. And so, had they said, hey, where do you see someone like me who really likes interacting with people, likes engaging with information on products, where do you see me fitting in? I might have had a totally different suggestion for them, like an account manager versus a salesperson. And so it's okay. That's why starting with sort of those broader things is nicer, because then you can, when you get to the goals piece, you can say, you know what, I'm not totally sure. I want to work in international business, but I'm not sure where I fit. That's part of why I'm doing these informational interviews. Don't put too much pressure on them to figure out what you should be doing. But it's certainly reasonable after you've talked about yourself some and they've talked about, how they've gotten there to ask for some advice or feedback on it. I can definitely tell you the more specifically you can articulate what it is you want, the more people can help you. So the longer that you stay in the I don't know phase, the less helpful folks will be. Now, the nice thing is, if you're considering, say, a job in operations, a job in finance, and a job in marketing, you can have three totally different narratives that you have. And so if you're talking to someone in operations, lean into the operations narrative, right? Well, I really like to know how things work, and I really like the idea of, being a part of the supply chain and getting things from one end to the other. Next interview, you're with marketing, right? Well, I'm really interested in how people tick. I want to know how to be persuasive. I'm curious about, how to really move the needle, and actually tell stories that matter to clients, right? Both of those things can be true in you. One of my favorite quotes is from Walt Whitman: "I'm large, I contain multitudes." It's probably who you are. But just have a specific narrative with each different person that you're meeting with that makes sense for why you're meeting with them, right? Don't talk about marketing with someone in finance. They're going to be scratching their head going, well, why are you talking to me? And wondering about your judgment. So be specific. And, this is where your homework about, investigating what kind of roles, what kinds of things this role does, where people tend to come to from it, for it. That's the kind of stuff that'll actually really start to help you customize your narratives to be more appropriate. To some extent, the questions that you ask in the interview really need to be focused on what are your goals for the interview. Are you trying to impress this person? Are you trying to learn about the field? Are you trying to learn about the job type? Are you actually sneakily trying to get a job there, but using this as an excuse to start to build your network within the company? What are your goals? And that's actually what should dictate what kind of interview questions you have. So when it comes to what questions to ask, my recommendation is think like an investigative journalist, right? You're asking probing, insightful questions. You want to reveal something that isn't obvious. So, you might ask about what kind of trends they're seeing that are affecting their job the most, or their company the most, or what things do they see coming down the pike that's just over the hill that's going to be affecting the industry in 5 years. You might ask about the reputation or culture of different companies in the industry just based on their perspectives. Sometimes people are a little bit shy about some of these questions, and that's okay. Let them be shy. Sometimes they will not be. And you can get some really interesting information. One of my favorite questions is, what do you wish someone had told you about this path? So, there's a lot of things that you can find out for yourself about the skills necessary and the, job progressions and that kind of stuff. But it's interesting to see how people respond to this. Sometimes it's things about managing people or the work-life balance or, how it really got them into a corner and they kind of wish that they weren't in that. Or that it was going to be a lot harder early on, but then it got easy. But it's a great question to ask. What do you wish people had told you about this path? You can also ask them what companies do they think are the most interesting in the market. It's a question most people, especially at a more senior level, are looking to see what else is going on out there. They're informed in different ways than you are. And so by asking what companies they think are interesting, it allows you to ask the follow-up question of why. And so again, it helps you really understand what is the landscape here, at least from that person's perspective. You ask 2 or 3 different people, you're going to be able to start seeing the overlap and have a much more full picture of what's going on. You always want to have, your closing questions. And one of them is there anyone else you'd recommend that I talk to? Another one is, I'd really like to stay in touch. I appreciate your time and this has been wonderful. Would it be okay if I emailed or called you periodically? Ask permission for that. Most people will say yes, but it's a courtesy. It's not an entitlement. So, and you'd be surprised, sometimes the folks they'll put you in contact with are folks that would be totally inaccessible or, that kind of are beyond your wildest dreams of who you'd really, really like to talk to. And, if you've targeted the right people in the first place, then whoever they're referring you to ought to be, I think, even more golden for you. So, there's a whole range of interview questions that I have provided for you, and so feel free to use any of them. And feel free to talk with me about your strategies for what to ask. So when you're going into the interview, always make sure you have some cards, a few copies of your resume, and a pen and a paper. You definitely should be taking notes in these conversations. The people that you're talking to will appreciate it. It will show that you're attentive and that you're taking it serious and that you want to remember what it is they're telling you. So it's not bad to take notes. It's really good to take notes. You want to have a card because you definitely want to leave your card behind. You want to have copies of your resume because you don't know, right? If it goes well, they might ask you for a copy and you want to be able to produce it right away. If it goes really well, they might say, hey, do you have a couple copies of your resume? I want to give one to my buddy. That's why you bring some extras. Same thing with your cards. You never know. They might take you down the hall to go meet their pal Joe, who's doing XYZ, and you don't want to be flat-footed and go, oh, well, I gave my only card to Mary. That's who I was expecting to talk to. So always have a little handful of these things. It's never a bad option. And, worst case scenario, you're carrying a little extra paper. That's not so bad. So it should go without saying that you want to be just as dressed up for an informational interview as you would a formal interview. It's a representation of you, your professionalism, what kind of person you are. So even if it's a very casual atmosphere, you still want to be a little dressed up. If it's a tech startup, and you're a guy, at least put on a suit jacket, even if you're wearing jeans. If it's a bank, you better be wearing your, 3-piece suit, whether you're a man or a woman. So think about your audience and what a professional in this situation would be wearing and wear that. So I think there's some interesting strategy with where to meet. Now, you can either say, hey, we can meet at a coffee shop, which feels kind of nice and informal and might put you both a little bit at ease. But what I recommend is try and meet them at their office. Offer to bring them some Starbucks, but meet them at their office. That'll give you a chance to scope the place out, get a feel for how it is. See, is the atmosphere real tense or is it really relaxed? Are people chatting? Is it a cubicle world? What does it really look like to be in that space? What does it feel like to be in that space? Now, even though you might not be seeking a job at that particular company, it helps you fill out in your mental landscape what kinds of things you should be expecting. If you go on 5 informational interviews and every single one of them has a cubicle layout, well, guess what? The likelihood is that that's just industry standard for that kind of a company. If they're all open space and friendly and chatty and everyone always seems to be working in a bit of a loud din, then that's what you should expect. You'll see as you go to a few different informational interviews of companies in the same industry that they do have really different feels. And sometimes a company might seem like the best place when you're looking at it from a distance, but when you actually get up close and feel the vibe there, that it's a very different situation. So if you can, try and meet them at their office. That also gives you the opportunity if they say, oh, hey, I want you to meet Joe down the hall, to be able to take you easily down the hall. And always remember, whenever you're at a workplace, always treat the help. So the secretary or administrative assistant that you might see, always treat them with respect. Oftentimes people ask the front desk folks, what was your experience? How did they treat you? If you don't treat them well, you're going to leave a bad taste with everybody and you've probably burnt a bridge. So it's just an issue of professionalism. So your informational interviewing should be a strategic, intentional way of building your network, cultivating relationships, and nurturing them. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you should have a whole community of practice. That is, people who do this day in and day out at different levels across different companies. You got to follow up though, right? Because if this is just a one and done, or you don't even say thank you, then it's pretty much useless, and you might as well save your time. It's not all that hard to do follow up, although I do recommend actually schedule it out because it's easy to lose track of, especially if you're doing a lot of informational interviews. So, of course, first you start out with a thank you, but be specific in the thank you. Talk about what it was about the conversation that was illuminating, that really surprised you, changed you, transformed how you were thinking about something. Really think about what it is, what fact or thing happened in there that you would like to touch to and remind them of, because that's half of the trick of the follow-up letter, right? It's just reminding them that you exist, it's showing courtesy, and it's again helping frame your identity and how they're relating to you. um, Via email, you can easily drop folks a note periodically, and I recommend some kind of thank you or immediate feedback in the first few days. Of course, best practices would be first day, but if you can do it within the first 3 days, I think that's great. But after that, you want to have some kind of light touch every month to 2 months. Now, on our schedule, it's pretty easy to queue that up with your terms, but even after you graduate, you want to keep this up. Again, you're cultivating and nurturing relationships for a long-term community of practice. So you can drop them a quick email and just say, hey, I'm getting ready to go to Europe. Hey, I just got a job. Hey, I've got a great interview over at this other company. Thank you so much for your referral. So you can email them, give them an update on you. One thing that I think is actually a pretty clever tactic is keep your eyes out for an article that might be relevant. And it might be a business article, or it could be something, let's say that you found out that you share a love of sailing, right? And you find something kind of interesting about sailing. It's a perfect opportunity to actually print something out, not forward, print it out, put a post-it note on there, just, a quick little note. Hey, Josh, I wanted to drop this note to you. I thought you'd find this article interesting. Thanks again for your time, Tiffany. You want to clip your business card to anything that you would mail, and then snail mail it to them. Snail mail these days is pretty rare, and it does stand out. And just taking the time to print out something, they may not read it. It doesn't matter if they read it. What you're telling them is that you remembered them. This is something that you think that would be interesting to them, so it speaks to some extent to your judgment. And again, it's another way of standing out. If you're emailing, make sure that you include a signature line. So, when I'm normally just sending something from my personal email, I just say, cheers, Tiffany. But when I send it from my professional, I'll have my title and my phone number and my email. Well, now, you guys don't necessarily have a title, but you can say, University of Colorado Denver student, or, your personal phone number, or what have you. So do something kind of like your card on the bottom just to remind them, because some professionals like me, I might talk to 200 people over the course of a couple of weeks. Now you take that out a month or two, I may not remember you. So the reason you want to do a signature line on your email is so you'll be just as memorable as if you clip your actual business card to something that you've mailed to them. So, but follow up, like I say, every month to 2 months. And, holidays are a nice time. Don't assume someone's religious or non religious. But the holiday season is always a nice time. Just say, hope you're having a happy winter, that kind of thing. In a perfect world, the follow up will be pretty easy because you've actually built rapport with these folks. You like them, they like you, and it's an easy conversation. It's a dialogue that you've already built and that you're continuing. So, definitely, though, follow up. So, I'll tell you why I like informational interviewing. Really, it's the best method to find out more about what it is you think you want to be doing, to meet really interesting people, and moreover, to build that community of practice that'll help you as you're trying to make these transitions. There's nothing worse than trying to make a major change in your life and not having the support, not having the knowledge, not having the connections to do it. Informational interviewing is basically free, right? All you have to do is have the courage to reach out to folks and the knowledge about who do you want to reach out to. It's a great way to not make mistakes in your career. We've had people that have, said, oh, I know that I want to do A, I know, I know, I know. And then once they got into the job, they went, oh my gosh, what have I done? And realized it wasn't the right fit for them. Well, you know what? Probably 2 or 3 informational interviews, a couple hours of their life, they would have found that out a long time ago. So use informational interviews, not just now, but throughout your career, whenever you're trying to think about new changes, new vistas, and use it to help pave the way. I think of it as taking the highway versus the back roads. It's just a lot faster and easier and smoother for you, and it'll help you get to where you're going. There's another separate video from this that talks about how you can start to identify companies and advocates. So I highly encourage you to check that out because it's a topic that fits right directly in with informational interviewing. So let me know if you have any questions.